What's up, everybody? This is Josh over at Mousepad, and here we have.
I'm Alex.
Just said that like you're.
I'm excited. I'm excited for the podcast, even though I don't feel good.
So Alex has a. She's on the end of the flu,
Yeah.
and it's just her throat and cough that's killing her. Me, I just have allergies, and apparently I making sure I'm saying this properly so I don't get demonetized. I scratched myself while really bad while doing yard work, and it's right perfectly where it hurts to work on a computer because I'm constantly resting my wrist,
Yep.
and I'm just like, and I'll forget it's there, and then how my computer is that it's right on my mouse is right on the edge of the table, so I rest my hand like the palm of my hand rests on the corner of the table, and so when I go up, it scratches it perfectly with the corner of the wood. Yeah, it feels great. Feels awesome. Fantastic. Anyway, we're not about that. So, if you look back in our other podcasts, you would actually see that we mentioned many genres about different things, whether it be co-op games or games done in the past or IPs that have done good and bad. And there are some IPs that are hanging on by a thread, and some that just refuse to die. And sometimes they refuse to die based off of fandom. Sometimes it's based off money. Sometimes it's based off, I would say, just general visualization and marketing. And of course, what I'm talking about is Star Wars. So cue the
Da 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 dun da da dun da.
that's the Imperial March. I was gonna do the traditional opening.
Oh.
I think it was John Williams that orchestrated that. Yeah. Fantastic. Never gets old. By the way, I look back on these recordings and I catch myself saying all the time, and I'm like, crap. So
I do that with
yeah, it's something
I've
that we always
noticed.
catch up with, and when we look back on. So Star Wars. There's again. But I am right now playing Jedi Survivor. And anyone who doesn't know, especially anyone who is not a gamer, this part's going to be a little confusing, but I'm just going to wrap this up real fast. Anyone who is a gamer, it's pretty much the Soulsborne take on the Star Wars franchise. There is a game, not Star Wars related at all, called Dark Souls that is known to be very, very difficult and has its own type of concept of gameplay of essentially if you die in the game, you don't just restart, you lose all your
progress.
you lose all your XP. Like you keep your equipment, but you lose all your level up points, and you have to kill the thing that killed you in order to get them back. Or in Star Wars case, you have to smack it. Yeah, you just have to hit it once. But if you play it on, I think it's if you play it on Jedi Master, you have to kill it in order to get it back. And if you die doing that, you lose it permanently, like it's gone. So I always love a good challenge, and I'm going to start off with the good news about this genre right off the bat, and we're going to loop back around to it as well. The Cal Kestis saga, as in Jedi Fallen Order, Jedi Survivor, the one I'm playing, is kind of its redemption arc, because Star Wars has not been doing good for a while. It's been a lot of controversies, had a lot of issues, and we're going to dive into that. So anyone who does not know Star Wars at all, I am not going to be doing lore. I am not going to be doing that. Is something that we're going to call a lore dump later down the road. We're just going to talk about where Star Wars started with games and how big it's been and its rise, its fall, its peak, its attempted resurgence, and things of that nature. We'll be mentioning a few games here and there. Some are very antiquated, some are very recent. So we're gonna be touching on a couple different things here. So first off, I'm a huge Star Wars nerd. I was one of those kids that had the cheap lightsaber that extended, like you could like flick it out, and it had the little button that actually did a flashlight and shined the plastic up. And all my friends got them. We had little Star Wars fights, Jedi fights, and yeah. I mean, I grew up with. Let me start with this. I'm proud to say that my dad got me into sci-fi and fiction off the bat, and I wish he would be more current with things, but no, he got me into everything that the 80s and the past before that brought in. He was around when Star Wars. He was actually working in the movie theater when Star Wars was just Star Wars when it first came out.
Mhm.
So he worked the theater, and he knows the episode 4, which is the first Star Wars movie,
A New Hope.
A New Hope, but it
Yeah.
was just called Star Wars back in the day. When it first
Mhm.
came out, it was just Star Wars, and it was a um, first off, most people did not think it was actually going to make it. Most people thought it wasn't actually going to be successful. And then it became, we talk about cult classics. This became a cult phenomenon, like immediately, right off the bat. Everyone loved it. And of course, after that follows Empire Strikes Back, which arguably the best movie. And I don't mean that as saying bad things about other movies. It's just it's one of the few movies that was barely edited because it didn't need to be edited, and it's got some of the best pacing, even though it's a mid-journey movie, meaning that the story is not finished. It has plot twists, it has a hero's journey, it has a hero's mistake, it has character development. All the CGI has been improved, all the sets are improved. You name it, you got it. So if you look at episode 4 to episode 5, it's night and day. Now, that being said, I grew up because I'm a youngin ish. You can't really say that anymore, can I?
I don't think either of us can at this point.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, but I mean, toss up. I mean, life expectancy has gone way up, so I mean,
Depends on who you're asking.
yeah, like in comparison to like if someone from Gen Y looked at me and was like, "You're not young," I'm like, "I know, dude. Like we have the silent generation is still kicking to some degree, so like barely, but they're still there. So I still feel a little young." Um, But I grew up with episode 1 when it was reinstated with the prequels, which was brand new CGI. Um, George Lucas, who was the producer and director, like looking back, a lot of people joke this plot was not made for kids, and I'm like, no, it's not. Like if you look back, the plot of episode 1 is actually the most political there is and very confusing. But to a kid, they did a good job with pacing on action. You know, like scene transitions, the fighting. There was an internal plot when it came to the Jedi and like finding Anakin Skywalker and stuff like that. So I mean, if you're a kid, I don't mean like little. I mean if you're like a young like preteen, you still know who Anakin. If you've seen the originals, you know who Anakin Skywalker is. You know who Obi-Wan Kenobi is, and you're seeing Obi-Wan as a Padawan, aka student in the Jedi Order. So that was cool because in Episode 4 you see Ben Kenobi, and that's old man Obi-Wan Kenobi. And so when you see Episode 1, you're like, that's cool. He's a kid. Like and the fighting was 1,000 times better. Obviously, like I mean, you put more money and time, and the culture of cinema had changed, where a lot more stunts were done with a lot more training and accuracy with the stuntmen when it came to sword fighting and whatnot. Because I mean, back in the day, it was. Here's the funny thing: I consider myself a swordsman, and if you actually rewatch Episode 4 and you watch the fight between Ben Kenobi and Darth Vader, that is actually weirdly pretty accurate longsword fencing. It really is, because you're actually just trying to like get underneath the enemy's guard and poke into their armor. So they're fighting like that, but it's not very cinematic, but it's actually very accurate. So it's kind of hilarious that like you want it to be more flashy in order to emphasize what is happening in the cinema. Because sometimes accuracy is boring, and not a it stinks, and I don't like looking at this, but small moves are all you need to um despawn somebody from reality. So when you try and be accurate to fighting, sometimes it doesn't convey well to the camera. And so with episode 1, 2, and 3, the fighting choreography was just top notch. Like the saber duels were top notch. When that game came out, everyone lost their mind. Like I said, everyone got a lightsaber, right? But also, this was during the like it was after the Nintendo 64. It was after the PlayStation 1. This is right peak PlayStation 2. And so episode 1, the Phantom Menace video game came out along with a bunch of other stuff. The like pod racing got introduced, which was kind of a drag racing in Star Wars terms, right? Still to this day, I think you could make an entire show about pod racing and it would sell like hotcakes.
Easily.
It really would. I'm surprised no one's done it yet because everyone likes racing, everyone likes mechanics, and if you actually
Disney.
just do that right, like, no, don't even curse it because like George Lucas is straight up trying to buy it back at this point. Like,
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah, he's kind of mad, and I don't blame him. We're not going to go into the Disney controversy too much. Let's just say that they dropped the ball on a couple things, and there is some generic Mary Sue stuff that did happen with that. You can look up that term, and there's some critics that went a little too hard on that, and that turned into accidental sexism, is what I like to call that, because they're coming from a good place because they're trying to critique character, but then they're utilizing her gender sometimes as part of that critique. And I'm like, Force users, that doesn't matter. It really doesn't. The whole concept, watch episode 5. Yoda, a tiny little like green goblin. Tell me I'm wrong. He doesn't look like a green goblin. I'm pretty sure that's what the prop department grabbed. They're like, grab a Muppet.
He was a puppet.
He was a puppet, but he was
He's
custom
coming
made.
back as a puppet.
I loved that. Yeah, he did one of his final scene in cinema was episode 8. And chronologically, like he shows up obviously in like newer made stuff, but that's newer made stuff, but in the past, right? Like in the chronological past of the storyline. But on the chronological, when they finally re-showed him as a Force ghost, which anyone who does not know Star Wars is like, what are you talking about? Don't worry about it. Just go along with it. But they did a projection of him, and it was his old puppet version, not the CGI version. And I thought that was so cute. Like, some people got mad at that. I was like, why? Because that's how he died.
Go back to your roots.
Well, not just back to your roots. It's like if you find an old version of episode 6, you'll find when Anakin, spoiler alert, Darth Vader dies at the end, like near the end. I'll say like very near the end, he dies. But Luke, his son, sees his Force ghost, and they actually had the actor who played Darth Vader actually show up as Anakin, just not scarred and pale. That was the original. Yeah, you
I
can look
didn't
it
know
up.
that.
Yeah, because if you look at a version now, it's Hayden Christensen, which doesn't make any sense. A little bit, like, because Darth Vader kind of, it's the idea of he came back as a Jedi, so like I see what they were trying to do, and so that's not that's not a big gripe. I personally don't like it because I think it takes away from that actor who played Darth, right? Hayden's gotten a lot of fandom. He doesn't need any more. If he gets any more organically, that's great. I'm talking about just from being Vader. Like, give that one guy who was in the classics his due credit. Like, so I don't like how this is what I mean about the edits. George will be like, let's tweak it a little bit. And that's why episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, which was the second movie, was so loved, because his wife's like, no, we're not tweaking this. There was like 2 things. She was like, no, that's fair. We messed up on that. Let's fix that. And that was like during the asteroid fight and stuff like that. Like, there's little things that they touched up there, but that's about it.
Yeah, because his wife was like huge, like had a huge hand in like the editing and stuff.
Well, if you look, I think she was the producer in the second one.
Okay, because I thought like she would like did like a lot of like editing to like decide like what they did and didn't put in.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of like, she was a big reason why it was as good as it was.
Yeah, exactly. And so we think a lot for her, and then episode 6 happened, and then it got very weird. And I don't mean that in a mean way. I mean, like, it started showing its age. Like, if you play episode 5 right now, the aesthetics, the styles stay unique to Star Wars. As in, you're like, yeah, I don't know what timeline this was made, except for the cinematography of the camera work, period. Right? And like the special effects. The special effects still hold up pretty well. Like, all those puppets and all those environments really look real. And then you get to episode 6, and it starts looking a little 70s. Like the hair, the facial hair, the mustaches. It does show its age on fashion, because they started incorporating our human Earth fashion into the set. and so it was a little odd. But that's neither here nor there. We're kind of jumping around here. Um, so when a movie comes out and it gets really popular, everyone wants to make merchandise. Think of it like classic. If you don't know video games, think of toy sales. It's the same concept, right? Except you're putting more investment in it because you got sound designs, voice actors. It has the same thing as a movie set. You got directors, editors, producers, the whole 9 yards because it plays like that. Except you have to create a world where the viewer is also interacting with it and able to progress through the game, right? Uh, so some of them were successes very early on, but most of those were direct to arcade. So when they went direct to arcade, that's when the racing game came out, which was really cool. It was one of those chairs that actually like rose up a little bit and like moved when you like turned. But it also had like the two Harley Davidson handlebars that were disconnected from each other that you actually had to steer your pod that way. And so you
Oh,
do
I
really
love
hard turns by just ranking it hard one way. It was really neat. Like
I love
if
that.
I ever get buku rich, I'm finding one of those because that still to this day is a fun game. And you could it did environments that you didn't see races in the movies. Like you can go to Coruscant and race.
Mhm.
Yeah, and you're flying through like buildings, you do like big jumps and you like go and you're like dodging local speeders that are just like doing basic traffic. So you try not to get hit by like a semi truck coming across like you're playing Frogger. It was a lot of fun. And then you have the other side of that coin, which was the actual episode 1 game, which I told you before. I told Alex before here. It looked like the best out of Atari and the worst out of Nintendo. It was bad. It was cool in concept because it was a 3D, pretty much like a 2D plus 3D camera style where the camera is above but at a slight angle. Um, what was neat is that in the movies and in the lore, until everything goes to hell in a and hell in a basket, Jedi don't use guns, blasters, or grenades, but you could totally do that in this game. You could just pick up a battle droid's carbine and just start going to town. You could pick up someone's thermal detonator and be like, catch. Yeah, it was really I'm surprised it wasn't more controversial because I think it was because no one really cared for the game. And it's kind of sad because I remember looking back and it was a hard game. There's no difficulty settings and just kind of had to slug through it. Now, when episode 2 came out, that's when they hit their stride. And they didn't just hit it on graphics, even their because they had the ability to actually incorporate battlefields because episode 1 is very much a very D&D quest. It's very go here, save senator, escape, land on a remote planet, you're safe, figure out how to get your ship repaired, go to the capital, attend a Senate hearing, go back to the planet you started on, save the day. It's not really a big war game, right? Or
Mhm.
a war movie, really. Like the battle is at the very end, which is traditional for cinema that I would do that. But episode 2, which is like the movie, it's called. Oh my gosh! Wow, I had to bring it apart. First is Phantom Menace. The next one is Attack of the Clones. And when that happened, everyone lost their minds because it showed we were able to picture big battles on cinema, but it cost back in the day a lot of extras and a lot of CGI. This was when CGI was starting to actually look pretty decent. Like you could sort of tell it was CGI, but they didn't stay
It
on the
was
shot
around
too long.
Jurassic Park level.
Yeah, it was but Jurassic Park's still pretty good to be honest. Like looking
Yeah, like
back, it's not bad.
Jurassic Park CGI is still like mind
It
blowing.
it still holds up,
Mhm.
right? Um but when Star Wars did because when episode 1 came out, CGI wasn't bad, but you could definitely tell it was like CGI.
Mhm.
And the only reason you knew it was CGI in episode 2 is because there's no way in heck this thing exists in real life. There's no starship taking off that is the size of Epcot Center, right? So you know that's fake, but you could not tell at all. And these battles that took place were pretty interesting. And they kind of built off that, whether it be one of my personal favorite Star Wars games, which is called Republic Commando, which is almost like a Tom Clancy SWAT game in the world of Star Wars. It's really fun. I highly recommend anyone who has not played it to pick it up. It's not pricey because obviously we're talking about it's dated. Um, and then you had, funny enough, it's like the ones that are called the actual episodes are not the best, but in comparison, it was if the first one was like eating saltines and American cheese, this was like having club crackers and cheddar. It's still basic, but it's a lot nicer. Um, and weirdly enough, more vehicle based, much more vehicle based. It works in the story, and they're always have that. This is when Star Wars didn't have much direction, and so before the show, the Clone Wars came out, and I'm talking about both shows. They used the video games and the comics to kind of illustrate what happened during the Clone Wars, because there wasn't much talk about what happened in between, because you just kind of went from, okay, this movie, the Clone Wars starts, and then the next movie, essentially Washington D.C. is being attacked by the Separatists. Is the best way I could describe this. Is Coruscant is the capital, and they're just getting hammered, and you're just like, whoa, I think we skipped a couple steps. One, Anakin has long hair. He's now a full Jedi Knight. He's no longer a Padawan, so we skipped all that training. We skipped all that character growth. Padme, his love interest, is pregnant. Like, there's a huge amount of things happening. We're just like, okay,
Because
I guess we're just.
cinema-wise, that's when the Clone Wars happens, right?
Well, 2 is when it starts. So at the end of 2 is the start of the Clone Wars. It's like the first shot heard around the world. That was the end of the second prequel movie, Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. And then when you jump directly to the next movie, it's like you're not at the end of the war, but you're nearing the end. Like, it's the last big battle, because the other battles that happen are more of battles that have been taking place for a while, like sieges or hit and run skirmishes that were obviously taking place before this, with the exception of the invasion of Kashyyyk, which is the Wookiee Chewbacca's race homeworld.
Okay.
So that's like I said, it's like one of the last battles is Coruscant, but it's one of the last big ones because you don't see a lot of what happens at Kashyyyk. And if you know the lore, it's very depressing. So I won't go into that. So game wise, when episode 3 came out, that's episode 2 video games were good, but you didn't need them. And it was kind of hard to replicate what a Jedi can do, because anyone who doesn't know Star Wars, a Jedi is someone who, everyone's shooting lasers. These guys are wearing monk like Shaolin monk like robes, are wielding laser swords like I would say the blade length of a small longsword, or if you can look it up, a Chinese scholar sword is around the size of what these sabers are like traditionally. And they are able to use, I'm going to do more scientific terms here, but more telekinesis, being able to move things around, being able to predict things where they seem like they have higher reflexes, where they can jump to insane heights, to where they can almost withstand getting hit by a boulder. Like, it's but they're using this mystical energy. So I'm not trying to.
Midichlorians.
We're not going to go into that. But it's called the Force, and it's very nerdy, but it's loved. But that's all you really need to know. And so, how do you actually? That's why when you got to the episode 2 movie and the episode 2 games, it was very easy to just do vehicle combat, because it's very easy to replicate guns and missiles. Just saying, it's very easy to do that. Um, but in that game, you also did play as Jedi sometimes, but it was clunky. It was a little clunky. Um, you could cut through droids, robots. You could throw your lightsaber and it comes back. You could do a double jump. I think you might have been able to do force push, but it was kind of useless. So, and on top of that, it felt very arcadey, and I don't mean that in a good way. I mean that it's very, it doesn't have any weight, doesn't have any heft, and it felt like you were gliding an avatar along the ground. It didn't look good. Then episode 3 came out, and then those games, still to this day, they're like the Lord of the Rings of the Star Wars games. If you actually like I said, when episode 1 and episode 2 came out, the games that were named after the actual movie were not good, but the spin-offs were great. This was the opposite. Episode 3, the actual game was a masterclass because you played as Obi-Wan and Anakin. And when you became, spoiler alert, and I mean that because some people actually like holding this spoil back, and I actually agree. So spoiler alert on the whole thing about the Skywalker family tree franchise. Anakin goes dark, becomes Darth Vader. That happens in episode 3 very heavily, with implications of people that are younger than 10 years old getting hit with a laser sword. That's the best way I can say that without getting demonetized. It's bad. He goes very bad. When you do that, you're in the game. No, in the game, you do not hit children, but you do storm the Jedi Temple, and you actually get to use Sith or evil Jedi abilities, such as Force Lightning, and you actually get to like grab somebody, pull them in, and like have them impaled on your lightsaber. Like it gets really good combat. The combat also is fantastic before that scene because you're playing all these battles and all these scenes beforehand and a little bit of extra stuff that they just weren't able to fit into the movie. But unlike the other one, you actually felt like you were a person. You felt like you're actually able to run around, and it's actually got a cool camera angle where it's coming at you from, I'd say, a 45-degree angle from the side, and sometimes it would twist a little bit, and then you can also move the camera somewhat. So it's kind of it's a borderline static camera, but not. While the other one, it was like the camera was locked behind your head, uh, and you're actually dueling these people when melee happens, or you're actually timing it perfectly when you're deflecting a laser instead of just holding block and they just do it. You actually have to work at it. Also, your force powers actually do the job they're supposed to do. When you grab something and you throw it, you launch it, and you launch it accurately. So it's very smooth, it's very integrated combat that actually knows what it's trying to do.
So you're telling me I can be a human catapult?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And that was when, in my opinion, the Star Wars games started hitting their stride because other games had kind of copied that formula and improved on some things, but by improving on some things, kind of take away from others. It's a give and take. So, and if anyone wants to look up what I'm talking about, it's the Force Unleashed games. So, when Episode 3 came out, that game came out, and there were some spin off games, but not famous ones. It kind of, because everyone kind of was like, okay, what do we do now? That's it. You gotta remember, this was before there was even a concept of Episode 7, which is the next movie that's after the last movie of the original trilogy. Because in Star Wars, they made the movies 4, 5, 6, and then 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Right? So the idea of even doing an Episode 7 movie was just, and that's where the comic books filled in. They're called something else, but the legacy novels that Disney decided to not use, which is a very big mistake. Those kind of hinted at where that story would have gone, and there were some games that came out way in the past, like called Jedi Outlaw or Jedi Academy, which actually talks about what Luke would have done after Episode 6. He would have restarted the Jedi Academy, and then Sith would have risen up in their own cult, and there was the remnants of the Empire, and it was following more so the books of what authors had created to follow this genre. So, where am I going with all this? The games had improved, and they kind of just didn't know what to do with it. And then before Episode 7 even came out, the Clone Wars show came around and they started playing more. What was really neat is that this was not live action. This was a cartoon. The first Clone Wars, I won't say is better. In my personal opinion, I think it's better because it's more concise and it just gets the job done in one go, while the one that's 3D CGI animated is good, but one is definitely with definitely some episodes made for kids. It's definitely got some like
It
this.
literally aired on Cartoon Network.
Well, both did.
Oh, they did? I didn't know
Oh yeah,
that.
you got to think like Star Wars is not all of a sudden going to go rated M. Like it's not going to go
Yeah.
rated R all of a sudden. That's just it's very weird if they ever did that. If they ever did that, period, it would just be the Boba Fett
Okay.
because I read his books and that is dark. So just because of the level of violence and there, you'd be surprised how often things died not because of a laser bolt. Poisons, acid, toxic. An animal grabbed you. An animal grabbed you and then threw you against the wall and your bone shattered. Like it was rough because it's supposed to actually talk about the outlaw bounty hunter, like 10-year-old kid trying to survive and like grow up and learn these really harsh lessons. So
Mm-hmm.
it was a very good story, not made for the faint of heart child. Like I would, it's really weird. There's books that's literally about a 10-year-old in Star Wars. The first one that was about a 10-year-old in Star Wars that's just by himself is probably the most adult out of all the series. Everything else is definitely made for kids. The Boba Fett book saga is definitely not. Um, and I mean by that, I mean you could be like a preteen, as in like 11, 12, and be fine if you have, you know, experienced different cinema. That's not what I'm talking about here. It's not like all of a sudden we're gonna go like adult, as in interesting concepts of relationships. No, that doesn't happen. I'm just talking about there's a violent nature to it that's very rough around the edges that some people don't have the mentality for that. Because it's one thing to be like, oh no, he got hit with a laser bolt, and so there's like a little glowy hole and a black spot on his chest, and he died. Oh no, that's really sad. No, in Boba Fett, there's like, no, he got impaled on the guy's gun. The guy was like, oh, that's easy, and he pointed his gun up and blasted his skull off. That just happens. So there's a huge difference of tone of that world. Okay. So that's when Star Wars started getting more mature, not just in that one story, but also with the kids' stories. Like there's still some episodes in the CGI Clone Wars that's very child friendly. And they're all, except the Boba Fett saga books, child friendly. It's just the tonage can be, it can vary. Of
Mm-hmm.
serious talks of philosophy, serious talks of even politics that are like not too. Episode one was really hard to follow the politics, but if you watch the Clone Wars, the CGI one, you can actually follow the politics. They do a really good job of actually breaking that down slowly with pacing, right? Before the CGI one came out, the cartoon came out, which was a very concise, I would say almost short series. And you don't need the CGI series. It was kind of its own thing. They didn't think the CGI series was actually going to happen. They just made the entire Clone Wars, like, I think it was like, I have to look this up. I'm going to be wrong. Just
Mm-hmm.
FYI, it's like probably 10 episodes. And each one kind of doesn't necessarily follow Anakin and Obi-Wan. Sometimes they do. Sometimes it's just Mace Windu being a badass. Like I'm not kidding. There's a scene where he takes on I think 1,000 battle droids and he lost his lightsaber and he starts force punching these things to pieces. Samuel L. Jackson would be proud. Um, and there's a method to my madness here. So in this cartoon version, not the CGI version, they really emphasize what the books were hinting at when it came to what the Force can do. Because when the last episode is the Battle of Coruscant actually taking place, because at the movie Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith, the very beginning is the end of the Battle of Coruscant, but the last episode of the Clone Wars cartoon is actually the battle.
Okay.
Yeah, I know it's a little confusing. I'm trying to follow me here,
I'm trying. Because
but
Coruscant is where Leia grew up, correct?
which one?
Coruscant is where Leia grew up?
No,
No, which one?
no. Balea grew up in Alderaan. You're thinking of a baby. You think Padme, and that's Naboo.
I am. I am thinking of Padme.
No, Coruscant is just the planet that is nothing but a city.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just all steel and metal and glass. Um, and you always wind up there. It's also where the Jedi Temple is. It's a lot of major pieces fit there. But Coruscant, like I said, it's like if DC, it's like it's. I was about to say something that I might get in trouble for. It's if a foreign country had all of a sudden parked carriers on the horizon that you could see off the coast of DC. That's what it looked like from their perspective. Like Yoda's just meditating and he's like, "What?" And he opens the blinds and there's just droids flying down past his window. And he's like, "Oh my god." But it showed what the Force could do because he goes outside and the first time you're like, it's hinted at in the movie Episode 5 Empire Strikes Back when Luke is just, I can't lift my fighter out of this tar pit. It's impossible. It's too big. Yoda, this dude that's literally could fit in this camera. Like he's tiny. He's like, yeah, say he's like this big. He's like this big. He's not like this big. He's like this big. But he's just like, lifts his little hand and a TIE fighter, it's not the size of an actual jet. I would say that it was the size of like the length of a long sedan with the width of a sedan and a half. Okay. So it's still pretty big. It's a big hunk of metal that's a space fighter that's meant to be in space. Like, so, it's no small feat. I'm just trying to talk here about size because that matters what I'm about to bring up. And he lifts it out of the swamp. And it's a beautiful musical score that goes along with it, but he says size matters not, because he speaks in backwards tongue because that's what his race does. And it really shows in this episode of the cartoon because he's just like, oh, there's battleships, ships. Like, I know the scale, so give me a second. It's like the size of 4 carriers put together. Like real aircraft carriers, if you like put them together, that's the size of a separatist Etzer class boarding battleship, meaning they're meant to land on the planet and drop troops because there's different big battleships for the Confederacy. These are the ones that are actually made to actually like go down slowly and land and just deliver not shock troops, but like there's everything like the Marines and the Army. The Marines hit the ground first and like clear the runway, and then the Army comes in. And don't bash me if you're Army. I'm just talking basics for people to understand. But you don't send your entire group first because that's logistically hell. You want to kind of clear that area where you can land a lot of troops. And so the Separatists would obviously send fighters and send shock troops to kind of soften the defenses so that these things are not taken out when they're landing because they're slow. But when they drop around 10,000 battle droids and I think around 500 tanks per
Damn.
ship. Oh yeah, these things are big. These things are big. And Yoda's just like, I got this, and takes 2 of them and just crashes them together.
I love that
Size
little
matters
guy.
not. And I loved that. And you don't see that in the CGI. But you do see that when you play the game Force Unleashed. You take an Imperial Star Destroyer and you just grab it, and it's a whole thing. Because you have to like dodge TIE fighter rounds. People are landing near you trying to kill you, and you have to constantly go back and keep trying to drag this thing, and you slam it into the ground. And you drag it into this. It was a planet that's made like a junkyard. And so you just slam this thing into the ground, and it's a lot of fun. It's a beautiful scene. But that's why it's called Force Unleashed, is because they're like, we're going to do a video game style of that cartoon you saw where Jedi were essentially demigods. They're not like, oh, we are guardian peacekeepers with abilities to move things like telepathically, sort of, and also have higher reflexes. But that's it. No, in the cartoon, they're like, yeah, masters are equivalent to an entire battalion. Like, there was the same Battle of Coruscant. It's Mace Windu and Yoda, and the clones are doing their best, and the clones are for the Republic, the good guys. And I just put air quotes to anyone that's hearing the audio. And they go, you take the western side, and the clone commander goes, what about the east? And Mace Windu just goes, I got that.
I'll take care of it.
I take the entire eastern flank. I got this. And he does. Verbatim. Meanwhile, the clones are kind of getting swarmed. Like, they're handling it, but they're taking losses. And they're straight up like going, okay, maybe I should use my other hand to grab a pistol and shoot both guns at the same time. Like,
So
it's bad.
is that kind of why they like, because I know that like in like the earlier like stories or whatever, they would have people like Jedis go out and find new Jedi younglings, is that why the universe kind of limited how many there would be because they're so powerful?
Yes and no. Um, that gets a little complicated. We'll talk about that in our episode of Lore Dump.
Okay.
Okay, that's a really good question. I'll make that. I'll answer it simplified this way: is that the Jedi knew that emotions cause when you are in touch with the Force. You're not just in you don't just have to be in tune and mature with your emotions. You have to be in tune and understand that your emotions are going to change drastically and be influenced drastically by your own events and the events of others. So that's why they don't recruit children. And you'll see this in episode 1, like rewatch it, and they're like, Anakin's too old. I'm like, he's 8. Like as a kid, I had no idea what they're talking about. They're like, no, they need to sensei force. You have to be almost like a little above a baby. You have to be a toddler.
Okay.
Yeah, you can't just be like, oh, a kid that's able to like do math. Like you can't be that old yet because you have attachments and your emotions are going to be more personal, and that it does show. It does actually happen. There's like one of the reasons Anakin's fall is that he had an attachment. He was attached to his mother. It was the first sign of him really going dark.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not even if they're aliens, even if they're sand people, they didn't deserve that. They really didn't. And I feel bad for Hayden Christensen, the guy who played Anakin, because he got made fun of when he confessed that he did that. And I think that the director should have done a better job. That wasn't Hayden's fault.
Mm-hmm.
Now, getting sidetracked, and to answer your question, um, it was more so the training changed. And Yoda had a big issue with this because these and the game I'm playing actually addresses this because you're a Padawan from that era. You're a Padawan from the Wars, meaning you got picked up during the Clone Wars.
Okay.
So your training, because part of your training is like, okay, when you do Jedi training, you start just at the temple. They're not gonna be like, okay, kids, have this laser sword. Hopefully, you don't kill yourself. Go out there in the battlefield. You'll be fine. Like, no, that's not how that happens. This isn't Warhammer 40K. Anyone who knows what I'm talking about will love that reference. But no, they train you at the temple. They give you training sabers, which essentially it doesn't cut, it burns, it stings,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's that kind of thing. Um, and it's at a certain point they will then assign at a certain age, and after you pass a certain amount of baby steps, baby trials, you'll get assigned a master. Okay, and the Jedi will not be the rank of master. It's just they call them their master, and it's not a weird sub thing. It's just more of a. It's meant to replicate more so martial artists.
It's a
So you
mentor
call your martial arts
student.
teacher master,
Yeah.
right? It's the same concept. They just don't use Sifu or sensei. They just say master. Okay. So you get assigned a master, and it's a 1v1 kind of training style. So the Jedi Knight, the master, still goes on jobs, peacekeeping assignments, and then the Padawan sticks around and follows the orders of the master. And if we want a really good rendition of what that's like, you should read the Obi-Wan books because that's everything that takes place in between him getting assigned his master, Liam Neeson, and everything that happens in between that and the beginning of episode 1. And it really shows like how that dynamic changes over time. So that's why it takes a while to train Jedi. It's not because they're hard to find. It's because it takes one-on-one training because the master is not just there to be like, hey, this is how you survive in the world, but they're also watching and looking for any signs of corruption. They're also and it's not like a very weird totalitarian, oh, you're corrupted, you're dead. No, it's more so you become maybe a clerk. You get reassigned maybe a Jedi counselor, as in someone who works with the Senate in order to kind of keep peace on more of a political galactic level, not a local sector. Because Jedi's will go to a planet and actually go, hold up, okay, what's the problem? What is actually happening right now? If you want a messed up but strangely good reference, take America right now. A Jedi would totally be like, yeah, this is the type of world that we'd be sent to kind of resolve peace and kind of fix the differences because you guys are like right on the brink of really bad stuff. They're not jumping into battles. That's actually not what they're meant to do. So during the Clone Wars, these kids had no choice because everywhere's a battle, and Yoda hated that. Um, and the life expectancy went down drastically Because yes, you have the reflexes to stop a few bullets coming at you, but if 500 droids are pointing at it like the redcoats that are in the Revolutionary War and just opening fire, I don't think you can stop that. This is before the ability to kind of freeze things in time, which was more of a I'm gonna get some flack for this. Originally, it was a dark ability. Now it's kind of a gray-ish to dark ability. But yeah, if you watch the beginning of episode 7, you'll see Kylo Ren freeze a laser bolt in place. And anyone who doesn't know Star Wars that first watched that watched the original series, I could hear in the theater gasps. Because that's just something you don't do. You either defend from that bolt or you dodge it. And he just was like, nope, freeze it. And then he just walks past it. And you're just like, oh, okay. You're this kind of level. Like, they did a good job with him. I give there's some bad things about those movies, but there's also some really good shots and some really good concepts that I think they should have followed through on. So why bring this all up? Because the games after that cartoon changed drastically. They're like, oh, there's a lot more stuff we can do with the lore of Jedi, with the abilities of the Force. So they started, and this is when games started learning environmental, uh, the ability to essentially manipulate environment instead of it just being wallpaper, right? You can actually cut things and things would actually break or slice in half. You could move things with your mind. You could move things as blocks and actually use them as a platformer to jump on things. So this is where the game started elevating to that level. And then that's really it until the resurgence of Star Wars, because after episode 3 and the Clone Wars shows, there wasn't much in terms of new content. It kind of was I won't say a dead IP, but essentially yes. Like it wasn't really going to be progressed in the traditional way of making more movies where it started, right? It was just going to progress in books, maybe games, and definitely like comic books and some toys. So it wasn't a dead IP, but it was just kind of lingering on because it was so famous and popular. It's not going to die, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the new movie came out, and to this I probably could pull them out, but I actually have Star Wars Vans shoes that I got specifically for the event, um, and it was good. We'll go. We'll talk about that some other time of the controversies of those 3 movies. But when, like, right before that movie came out, I think the Force Unleashed games came out, and that was kind of like peak what we can do with this whole mechanic of manipulating objects in space. Because the Force Unleashed was like, yeah, you have these guys that have some force powers. Let's turn it up to Dragon Ball Z scale,
Uh-huh.
where a force push in the past would make somebody like like stagger or maybe fall down. Well, now it's more like a cannonball of air gets launched at you. And I'm not over exaggerating. That's literally what it looks and sounds like. Like the first scene is you as Darth Vader going to Kashyyyk and these Wookiees are charging at you and you're just like force push. And you don't even have to use your sword. You just use force push 3 times and they get launched in the air like ragdoll effects. It's hilarious. I don't mean that as in like the death of a Wookiee's hilarious. I mean the ragdoll effects in the Force was hilarious, and it was fun. It was an over exaggeration on a concept that had been touched on previously. So when these new movies came out, the IP opened up again, right? And then people are like, okay, what games are we going to get? Now, in the past, especially during like in between episode 2 and episode 3, we had a game called Battlefront. All right. Me and my brother played the crap out of that. It was a really fun game, and it was a war game simulator, pick your class, kind of like playing Battlefield or class based Call of Duty, not customize your loadout, right? So you choose like a jet trooper, and then you got like a short range like scatter gun, like blunderbuss gun, or you have a sniper, right? Or you have a traditional trooper that just has a semi-automatic or automatic rifle.
So it had like limited like customization. So like you couldn't just have like some random person who was fighting like able to build a lightsaber, basically.
No, well, actually, it was fun how it worked because you had heroes, and so you could because you start off playing troopers, whether you're playing the Clone Wars, you play as either droids or clones, and then you also play during the rebellion during episode 4, 5, and 6, and you can play the battles there too, like 100%. So you can play as rebels and you can play as Empire. Now, how it worked is that when you got enough points, not victory points, but something else, it's been a while since I've played, but you eventually could pick up a hero for temporary, just like a timed amount. You get to be a Jedi or a Sith or a bounty hunter with a jetpack like Boba Fett, or General Grievous, which is not a Jedi, but a droid hybrid with 4 arms with lightsabers. So you got to play around with that, and there was also still, like, in the big battlefields, there was actual vehicle combat on top of infantry. So it definitely felt like, if you've ever played Battlefield, it is a very different vibe than Call of Duty. Call of Duty is very run and gun, while Battlefield is, oh yeah, these walls are actually like breachable. You can put C4 on a building and actually knock it down. You
So
can
was
get
it
in.
just fighting, or was there an actual story to it?
So the story was in the narrative, not during the fighting. The
Okay.
gameplay was all fighting.
Okay.
Okay. But the story was, let me rephrase this. The story in Battlefront 2 was really good. The story in Battlefront 1 was just play the game. You're playing these famous scenes, enjoy, right? Do you need lore based off of your Snickers that you're eating? It's just good fun, right?
Okay.
Um and Battlefront 2, they actually followed the 501st, which is a reference to the 101st Airborne. That's a real regiment in World War II, and the
Mhm.
501st is a regiment in the Clone Wars, which followed Anakin. Okay, so the 501st one, when you played the storyline in Battlefront, Battlefront 2, the narrator was the same man who did Jango Fett and the clones. So it was really cool. It was really cool. And some of the stuff that they touched on was neat during the Clone Wars, but where it got interesting is the game didn't end at the end of the Clone Wars. It kept going. And so the 501st, you got to see their transition from Republic to Empire, as in clone troopers to stormtroopers, but they're the same guys. And
So,
there's some
like, when
weird
Order
events.
66 happened?
They touched on it, but they did not focus on it.
Okay.
They actually did some really cool stuff. Like during the Clone Wars, you were on the planet of Lucia, which is a very tropical, vibrant, plant-based planet, and you're with a Twi'lek, the alien race that has the tendrils in the back of their head for hair that are usually green, blue, or red. Um, that Her name was Shak Ti. She was a Jedi, so you followed her, and so like you still play the same game in the story, and so but it's your narrative of who you have as your hero,
Okay.
right? You don't just choose a hero; you're playing the story, right? So you only get
Gotcha.
one. Yeah, it's meant to be canon, but how they reference 66 is actually more eerie than playing it, because they're like, we loved her, she fought her way to make sure that we all got home in one piece. God, when the order came, I just really hope it was quick. Like that's the reference they would do. They were like, oh, right, because you guys didn't kill her. And so it's very somber without being heavy-handed.
Gotcha.
It's very well done. And then there's scenes that's not touched in, like, you would not be able to do in a movie or a show. Like, I'm like, maybe now, maybe now. Back in the day, it was like weird concept. So think of it this way: Empire Rises. Okay, you're now stormtroopers. Where do these clones come from? Do you remember?
They were all based off of one person to prepare for the fight on the Republic side.
Yes, but do you remember where or who made them?
I don't remember who made them, but they were based off of the original Jango Fett, right?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
You're dead on. That's why all the clones, especially from the 501st, sound the same.
It was Palpatine, wasn't it?
Well, that's not. You're right, but that's not what I'm talking about here.
Oh, okay.
You are correct, but
I'm
that's more of
just
a big
beating
picture.
around like the point that you're trying to make.
Yeah, no, you're accurate, but it's not what I'm going for. I'm sorry. No, it's a planet called Camino, which is a sea, like an all ocean planet. It's a race of aliens that are probably the most alien out of all of them, to be honest. And that's saying a lot, because there's a lot of different alien races out there in Star Wars. And what I mean by that is in like Area 51 looking. Right. They got the like the big head. They're not green, but they're white and they got big eyes, big head, long neck. They have weird movements where it's so smooth, it's odd. Um no, what would happen if Camino rebelled? What would happen if the clone facility rebelled against the Empire? And so there was actually a battle where you, as stormtroopers from the Empire, are invading Camino and you're meeting resistance from clone troopers from the Republic.
So it's just a bunch of people fighting themselves.
Except it's not, because
They're
it's
still
almost like
excited.
two timelines are clashing at once,
Huh.
because you have the bad guys, because they're the same. Like, yes, they are the same clones technically, but hear me out. You are playing at this point the villains faction army against what you used to be, which was the protagonists faction army. And what's really fun about that is that at this point you've gotten sort of used to playing Empire, but you remember playing Republic. And so you remember all those, because you're not, when you switch to Empire, it's not like it's a perfect blend. Like, stormtroopers have a higher rate of fire, shorter range. Okay. When you play as clone troopers, your jetpack is actually a, like, you can hover in things. But when you play as Empire, it's a jump pack. Yes, it's a jetpack, but it more of launches you forward at a further range, but you don't get to hover. So it's more of jumping in the enemy lines and blasting them with a shotgun. So you get these different takes on it, and now you actually get to fight each other with it, which mechanically is just fun, and then aesthetically it was just cool. And it also is the only time they reference why you don't clone anymore, because spoiler alert for episode 7, there's a trooper that takes off his helmet and he doesn't look like the original clone donor, let's just say that. And that's Finn.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh.
Where did he come from? Well, they indoctrinate and brainwash people to be stormtroopers now, except for the 501st, except for Vader's regiment. That's why whenever Vader makes landfall, his troopers are seasoned, because they're from the Clone Wars. And they're the only division that still has a Force user leading them, which means it's not just, oh, we have a Jedi that's a tank. We have a Jedi that can go, bad guys are over there, launch grenades. Like, I know they're in the trees. Just do it. Before your sensors even pick it up. So they have almost precognition abilities, right? And fun fact, and I wish they would touch on this more, Vader has a weird, not weird, weird's being mean here. He has a genuine, and you see this in episode 3, he cares for his troops. They're not expendable clones.
They're
They're
like
actually people to
brothers.
him. And that's, in the comics and in the game, that stays relevant. Just to the 501st. All the other stormtroopers, he doesn't care. He's like, whatever. I don't. You are expendable. You're useless. I don't care. But his boys that he had actually like fought beside for years, and that they saw his transformation go from Anakin to Vader and did not judge him. And he's like, you guys are my only friends. Like, it's
So
the
is it
band of
because they
brothers
were on that
concept.
journey with him that he
Yeah,
cares about them so much? Okay.
and he actually cares about them too. Like, he actually goes like, no, we're gonna, if battle ever ends, I'll find something for you to do and you'll have a happy ever after. He's never going like, I don't care. He actually, it's weird to see Vader actually nice, but it's the only time he is. He's the only time he's genuinely kind is to his own troops, just from that one group. And I wish they would touch on that more, but it would a little ruin the flavor of villain for Vader because it humanizes him. But if you read the comics and look at it from that perspective, it's really fun. It's actually kind of neat. Um, so why bring up that game? Why bring up all this? Well, when the new movies came out, they decided to EA, because the original game was not made by EA. I don't think. I would have to look it up. But EA got the rights, period. And they remade Battlefront 1. And it was a great job. It's really good graphics. You took 3D dimensional space, like scan shots of the big battles that you saw in the movies instead of CGIing them by hand. So you had like per scale battles, which was kind of neat. But a lot of concepts people did not like. Like, for instance, in order to claim a kill in the new Battlefront, You don't just shoot somebody and they perish. You have to go up to their corpse because there's a little token and you have to grab the token. I'm like, that kind of defeats the purpose of the gun, dude. Like, what? I don't understand what your point here is. And it was a lot of like, you can break that down and look into that. An audience, I highly recommend you look into that because obviously there's going to be patches and they fixed it. Because if you pick it up right now, there's going to be a lot of improvements. Period. Right. But when EA grabbed that, it was not bad, but it was really weird, and it was only a few maps, and there was no campaign. And so a lot of people were going, "Why did you do this? Was this just for a money grab?" Right? And then as the fandom grew or got more members, because now there's people that are younger from a different generation that then go, oh, Star Wars is coming back. I heard about this. All my older siblings or my dad, was a big fan. So I'm going to jump into this and I'm going to rewatch all this. And there was reaction videos of these people watching this for the first time and being surprised. Oh my gosh, Anakin Skywalker's Darth Vader. Ah! No, Luke, I am your father. The whole 9 yards. And that's great. And I'm really happy about that. And I'll always be happy about that. But then they picked up the new games because they're like, we're not going to play the old games. We're going to play the new games. And they suck. They genuinely stink. And when Battlefront 2 came out, this is when I said I wouldn't touch on many controversies, but one, this is the one we're going to talk about. Because you can excuse, at the beginning of this podcast, to talk about episode 1, the video game. You could excuse that game being low resolution, kind of ish crap, because it was early and video games weren't a big market back then. There wasn't a lot of investment into it. It was more of let's monetize on this market to get that extra cash to work on the next project kind of thing, like the toy release, right? Mm-hmm. You're just doing that for merchandise. No, at this point, games have become its own hobby, its own fandom, and its own source of income, like Twitch streamers, YouTubers, reviewers. Like, they make money and actually have careers based off of what they do with video games that they don't even produce. So this had become a huge thing. By the time Battlefront 1 came out, we had YouTubers that were actually full-blown critics, right? This was no longer YouTube just for fun and games and for random content creation of funny ideas and trolling. This is where people actually were starting to make careers out of this. Mm-hmm. So kind of the worst time for EA to drop the ball on a game of the most beloved franchise named after a previous game group called Battlefront that had a huge love. Because when Battlefront 2 came out, and it's called Battlefront 2 by EA, not Battlefront 2, there's a difference. So EA's Battlefront 2 came out. There were some things that people were like, this is really nice. And you know what those are? The obvious. Graphics, sound design, sets, what you would expect. Why are there microtransactions for cosmetics? Why add gambling to a game where you're gambling to get cosmetics? Like, this isn't like, oh, I'm gambling and I might get an improvement to my character. Because remember, you don't customize your loadout. So you're just getting cosmetics, but you're paying real money to try and get these cosmetics. It's not like you just buy a pack and you get these cosmetics in the pack. Like, if I got, hey, I want the rebel loadout of the smuggler loadout, and it like came with Han Solo, like Harrison Ford's pistol and his outfit and stuff like that, right? Like, I'd be like, oh yeah, sure, if I'm going to play this game for forever with my friends, I want to have certain customized loadouts, as in not different types of weapons, but just the aesthetic of it, right? So that's different. That's not what EA did. They did both. They said you can buy it for a huge amount of money, or you can gamble and maybe get it. Now, at this point, Disney 100% owns Star Wars. And people have been criticizing Disney somewhat for episode 7 and later episode 8. So they were already in hot water, and they were in hot water because Disney owns Marvel, and they're trying to keep these franchises afloat with positivity. And out of the corner of their eye, they just see all these angry people getting mad at EA, which is an people don't realize, kind of an old, as in well seasoned game company.
Mm-hmm.
Like these are the people that started the Madden games, to give you a reference, and that was original Sega. So this is a company that should be able to know what and what not to do. And they took this idea of microtransactions and crammed it down our throats.
And turned it into gambling where little kids are playing.
Exactly. On top of that, not many maps were available on release. This is the second game. You don't do that. The first game, a lot of when you make a first game, and even as a new, I say new, but as in like you just got this IP, you're making everything from the ground up, and you also advertise we're not making the CGI. We also have to go to the original sets, and we're actually mapping that based off the original sets from the movies. A lot of people go, yeah, sure, not many maps. We kind of get it. Like we're not happy about it, but we're not raising our fists in anger. Battlefront 2 comes out, and there were, I think, now when I'm going to say this very carefully, there were a good 8 to 10 maps, but only like 3 to 4 of them were actually big. And these are games that are supposed to replicate battles.
Mm-hmm.
So everything else was like tight corridors, which don't work in this type of game. Right? This is a fast, you die, you respawn really quick. And you like can throw a grenade and kill like 5 people in the hallway. Like this is not a game where you want tight corridors is part of a big map where you could circumvent going wide and long around a facility. So you can have a choke point in the middle of a map that takes less time to get through, but there's more combat, or you can go the long way either to the east or to the west and fight through the trenches, but have a higher chance of survival by taking your time. So that's fine. That's not what this is. This is here because Battlefront 1, just like the original, didn't have a campaign. Once again, we were like, fine, whatever. Battlefront 2 had a cool idea of a campaign ish, right? And then people started coming up like, hey, these multiplayer maps that are small, why are they just small pieces of the main campaign's maps broken up into bits? Why'd you do that? We can kind of tell we're not idiots. These aren't just children that are playing these are adult fans that have the ability to reason and cognitive and also communicate. And there are critics online that are analyzing this. And so you have people like the Act Man who actually did a huge breakdown of this, and you had Russian Badger who kind of trolled on it. And it wasn't good. To the point where Disney, it was almost like Mickey came down from South Park's version of Mickey Mouse and just kicked the crap out of EA and goes, I am already trying my best here to keep fans happy, and you guys are shitting on the game industry side of this. I don't need you. I will pull your rights. I don't care if I have to break a contract and pay $5 billion. I can flip that. You can't. So get it right. And so Battlefront now, there's no microtransactions, and all the pricing to get cosmetics is almost null and void. But the damage was done.
So did they offer anything to the customer base that had been spending all of that money on the
Oh no.
cosmetics?
Are you kidding me? No, not at all. Not at all. And that's where EA kind of lost
Respect?
a lot of respect. And when there was rumors that EA was like, hey, we're going to do a single player, not multiplayer, because EA was kind of churning out these multiplayers you can't play by yourself except for the campaign. Because in the old Battlefronts, you could just play custom games by yourself or with a friend. Right now, you can't play couch gaming, as in you can't play 2-player on the same console. And if you want to play any game that's not the campaign, you have to play online with people. And so they changed that. So that like they kind of all they did was they walked back the steps of trying to milk this cow for all it's worth,
Mm-hmm.
but the damage was done. So when EA was like, "Hey, we're making a single player Jedi game," we were like, everyone was like, "Oh, that's coming out. Who's making it?" EA. Oh no. Turns out it's great. It's fantastic. in my opinion, it's probably one of the best Star Wars games I've ever played, and that's saying a lot. And to make that, I'm going to say this really, really fast, is you play after the events of, you play in between episode 3 and episode 4. That's what you're doing. And you are a Padawan that survived the purge, the ones that Order 66, all the clones turned on their Jedi and killed them. Um, and how they do the level up system is this guy repressed his force knowledge, almost like he had PTSD and a psychiatric break. And so you still have your lightsaber. You can still attack and block ballistics and stuff like that. You still do the traditional Jedi, but you can't force push, you can't force pull, you can't double jump. All you can do is slow things down for a couple seconds. That's it. And what's really neat about that is actually how that ties into the next game. Because a lot of games where you like play as a hero and then you get to the next game, it's like, oh no, you lost all your abilities. It's time to learn all these again. They don't do that. Actually, it works. It works really, really well because this is where I'm going to get into the Souls concept. The no, not the religious. I'm talking about the game type, which is called Dark Souls or Demon Souls or Bloodborne or Sekiro. Pick your poison. The other mechanic that I said at the beginning of other than losing your XP is you have these checkpoints, these rest areas that you get to, and this is kind of an open world slash. It depends on which one you're playing. The first one, the second one. So I'm going to say open world to keep it simple. But there are these different rest points around these different areas of these levels, right? So when you take out a bunch of enemies, you work your butt off. It's supposed to be a hard game where you're fighting to survive. And as a Padawan that doesn't have force push or force pull or anything, it actually makes you work for it. And you slowly through trials and also having flashbacks of you as a child learning how to force pull, force push is your tutorial. It's really neat that it organically teaches you how to use this, and you actually start not having any powers and learning how to do this slowly and integrate it into your survival, because every time you touch a rest stop, enemies respawn. So you can make it pretty far, and then you have to use all your health kits. You barely survive because remember, you're not trying to lose that level up point. You're not trying to lose those XPs. So you got to go back to that campfire or meditation point in Star Wars. You meditate, get your health back, your force back, your health kits back, but all those guys you took out are also back. So you have to get good as a player to actually progress. And so organically, it actually makes you feel like a Jedi at the end of the game. It actually makes the player feel like they've earned that title Jedi Knight.
Hmm.
It's very cool how they did that. That's why I say it's my best. That's my favorite because I've never seen a game that makes you not just earn it, but organically makes total sense why it would happen. Right. And then the second game, it's not about acquiring new powers. It's more of, we'll say, stances. That's actually what they're called. So, like, there's dual blade, which is pretty much a bow staff, only instead of a stick, it's a short stick in the center, and then you got two lightsabers on the ends. The classic style. Then there's oh my gosh, I'm getting the names wrong, but like there's one where you just hold two lightsabers in each hand. There's one where you actually hold a gun in your left hand and a saber in your right. So there's different ways of how you play that, and it's more based off. Like, don't get me wrong, the first one's got a good story, and it definitely feels a little linear. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I think it does very well in that. Because you go to different planets. You don't really go to that many planets in two. It's one big world. It's more open It's almost like the difference between Dark Souls and Elden Ring. Because Elden Ring is an open world game, while Dark Souls, sure, it's open world, but it's more like dungeon crawling,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's definitely how the first Jedi Fallen Order is. It's definitely more dungeon crawling, but you're going to these different planets with different ecosystems, biomes, and dealing with different enemies other than your normal stormtroopers. So, and stormtroopers are no slouch. They're actually scary. Like, not the guys with the basic gun. He's going to be able to deal with that because he went through the Clone Wars. He knows how to deflect a blaster bolt. How about a minigun? If you don't know what a minigun is, it's the one that is a belt-fed circular chain gun. And that's terrifying because they don't just have that. It's at the bunt, at where the barrel meets the actual gun is a force shield, like an actual shield that deflects basic lasers. So you have to know what you're doing. And then there's guys that just have rocket launchers, and then there's troopers that have shock sticks, which if you watch episode 7 you'll see those. You don't really see them in the original trilogy, but they have melee types as well. um so these games have gone up and down all around, and we're hoping that they kind of stay consistent because I think we're gotten to the age where companies are going, hey, maybe don't piss off the fans. Maybe don't think we're higher level than our customers, because I think they kind of realized maybe being whether you want to criticize Disney for being an activism or you want to criticize Disney for being miser, is miser a proper word? But a penny pincher, right?
Okay.
Um, but I think they've learned. I think they've learned that maybe going down this road is not the smartest. And yes, nostalgia, you can only sell nostalgia so much before people start having an issue with the product as a whole. And that's where I see Star Wars going. And that's what I meant by at the beginning of there's a mixed message here is I love the Star Wars games, but I told you, Alex, that I don't really buy games on release. I wait for them to be updated. And not just that, but why would I put my trust in a corporation that I've seen constantly make money specifically off of people that buy on things on release without double checking their quality control, or having people in a project? This is my favorite, when they have people in a project that aren't even enjoyers of the lore in the world that they are also building. And we
Hmm.
saw that with Witcher, and we saw that with Rings of Power. And it's very sad that we've gotten to that point. And I told you I would not touch on the new movies very much. And this is, I mean that. My reference to that is that Kathleen Kennedy, who was hopefully stepping down soon, and I wish her the best health and the best like retirement. But she straight up admitted in a live interview, "Oh yeah, we don't have a general plan for the idea of the movies. We just kind of go by the skin of our teeth." What? You are taking one of the most famous genres, other than probably it's argued more famous than Lord of the Rings, right?
And
Because
it's not
Star
even
Wars,
about fame, it's about beloved.
well, it's not. I bring up fame because it's not fame per se. It's more so it has such a huge fan base,
Hmm.
and unlike like Lord of the Rings is famous,
Yeah.
sure, it's obviously behind me, but Star Wars is not just famous. Its IP has touched everything. There has been so many toys. Because Lord of the Rings, yeah, it's PG-13, but there is a difference when a conservative mother looks at, oh, there is a monster orc just slamming their axe into the ground where a dad used to be, and a head just got chopped off, and black blood just starts flying in the air off this orc. That's in the first movie, by the way. And then you look at Star Wars, and you're like, oh, it's pretty lights and burn marks and funny jokes and quips, right? That's Star Wars. It's ironically more violent more often, but not in the way of gore. It's just action. It's an action family friendly, not a family per se movie. Well, Lord of the Rings and different IPs that have stayed through the test of time kind of have a certain flavor that fits a certain group set, right? While Star Wars is just very broad. And on top of that, they have huge merchandising. They've been in the toy business forever. Ever since the first movie came out, they started releasing little models, and then the next movies came out and they released more stuff that was more interactive and buildable. And then when the episode 1, 2, and 3 came out, they had more children's toys and big toys to play around with. They had more video games. They brought out more TV shows, radios, the whole 9 yards. It's been huge, and to take that and go, yeah, we don't really know what we're doing. What are you talking about? You have no plan at all. Nope, no plan. And that's what they did. And that's the most controversy I'll go into it because I don't want to seem biased. All I want to seem is I know you could have done better, Disney. You could have done a lot better, and you could have. It's kind of like when you spread yourself too thin, your projects start getting um, taken by the wayside. I think I'm gonna quote a show, Parks and Recreation. Fully ask one thing, don't half-ass two things. You know, and Disney half-ass like 50 different things at once. And sometimes those things hit off like a, to hit off great. And that was like Marvel, right? And then they went into their IT, like their CGI department and their like traditional, and they started recreating original movies, and that didn't go well. And then their Star Wars was kind of a hit or miss. Honestly, if you ask one person, they think the movies are great. Well, the first one was great, and the last one was crap. Everyone agrees that the last one has a lot of issues and a lot of campiness, but there is hope, ironically, a new hope for Star Wars, and that is we could see, as George Lucas puts it, he would like to see stuff that doesn't follow the actual traditional story of Skywalkers. He wants to see other characters in this world do their thing. And I think that's actually a great move that we're going to see in the future. So I see you're tired.
Little bit.
Yeah, you're like,
Which is crazy because I took Dayquil, not NyQuil.
it doesn't matter. I mean, you sneeze a lot, you feel sick. It's gonna wear on your body over time, you know.
Yeah.
So this is probably the first time we're not gonna have to edit that much.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, because we've taken like big breaks before and other things, and we're like, oh man, we got to edit that out. Crap. But yeah, no. Do you have any questions at all about this
Which one's your favorite
game, movie, what?
game?
Well, that's hard. So it's a weird answer because I would have to say it's a tie. Now, talking about just playing by myself. If I'm playing with a bunch of friends, I would say the original Battlefront 2.
Mm-hmm.
Just because there's things like there's a Risk, like the board game Risk.
Mm-hmm.
There's a game like that where you like have all the different planets in the actual like galaxy, and you actually have your ship that you move around and you like do battles, and you can actually reinforce areas that you're no longer there. Oh yeah, it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. There's so much to do in that game that's fun. Um, so with friends, that right, but that's not usually how I play. If anyone knows me, I like single player games. I like to be able to pause. So that would be a weird tie. I'm going to bring back this other game, and I want people to look it up. It's called Republic Commando. It came out on the original Xbox. It is on Steam, but there is no controller port for it. That might be an issue for some people because it's made to be fast paced, right? And like I said, imagine a SWAT team in the world of Star Wars. That's what that's like. It's a unique take because most Star Wars, even the battles with Battlefront, while it does it very accurate to the movies, there's not a lot of realism. Like, why are people just standing up and just shooting with no cover? It's very, you know what I mean? Like, it's very, you could tell this is not meant to be taken too seriously. While, no, you tell your boys, like, hey, take up a sniper position right there. I want you with a grenade launcher right there, and I want you to breach that door right there. And when that breaches, we're all going to throw grenades in the door, and then I'm going to cover the rear. Like, you do all that. Like, you tell your people where to go and what to do, and will get flanked, and it's a bunch of weird different concepts of like, the first level is you're in the final battle of the episode 2 movie, the Geonosius, that desert planet. So you're dealing with flying aliens as well as battle droids. They actually make the droids scary, not the little guys. Those are just basic. But like the super battle droids are like, no, you have to coordinate fire and actually focus fire with your carbines. Because in the movies they make them go down pretty easy, and that's fine. I like what they do when they make the super battle droids actually a danger, because the concept of battle droids is we don't need you to be big and bulky. We need you to be a skeleton with a rifle, because the rifle is what's going to kill things, not your body. While the super battle droid is, we're tired of things going down so fast. So one, these things were developed so Jedi couldn't just yank the gun out of their hand with the Force. Their gun is a wrist Uzi. It is a Gatling gun on their arm, and they can just swap it to a micro rocket launcher. Yeah, straight up. And it's tanky. It's very tanky. And so you have to actually know what you're doing. Um, and so when you play the Star Wars game, that's the other one, which is my favorite, which is the first game of the new EA Fallen Order games. It's not that I don't like the second game. I'm already lost in that game. Like I'm like, oh my god, I have to like Google how to get to this location and what do I have to do next. And it's one of those games where it's not bad, but for me personally, I don't want to have to do homework for my game. I don't have
Mhm.
time for that. It's not bad. Like I used to be able to dive into games like that and love it, and I would appreciate it more than the first one. But that's a younger version of me.
Mhm.
Now I want it not to be spoon fed. There's a difference. Like there should be a challenge, but I should not have to have intellectual issues with a game, right? Where I'm getting confused on where to go. And like I've been in the same spot, and I mean like it's an open world. I've been in the same open world area the last 3 times I've played, and I'm like, I don't know how to get to this next part because it's not like I'm lost. I'm clearly know where I am. I
It's
see
just
the
not giving
marker
you
on
the
the
kind of
map.
guidance that you need.
Yeah, there's no guide, right? Which is fine. I get it. It's supposed to be more of a wilderness survival concept, right? Great, 100%, fantastic. That's not the issue. It's just me personally, I don't have the time to figure that out because there's certain things where like, oh no, you need this next ability or level up for your droid to get to this next section. And I'm like, I don't know that. You're not telling me. So while also I would say the Fallen Order, which is the first one, has a faster paced storyline. So you have that level of because it's not just like interacting with your characters and like on your ship in person. Like, yes, that's true. And yes, the characters like acting and their CGI is better in the second one. That's obvious going to be the case. But there's more interaction. I'd say there's more like dialogue also over comms. So you're getting more of that, what's going on. And it also that feeling of being a Padawan trying to
Like the
do all this.
immersion.
Well, no, the immersion's on both.
Okay.
The immersion really is on both. Like I'm that's the same regardless, but it's the vibe of being a Padawan versus a Jedi Knight. It's kind of like saying, Alex, right now, I'm not saying you're old, but you're seasoned like me, right? If all of a sudden Fallout 4, the apocalypse happens, not nukes, but let's just say EMP goes off, you're not you're stressed, but you're not freaking out, and it's not like you don't have skill sets and experience over time, right?
Yeah.
You feel me?
Mhm.
What if I did that to you and you were like 12?
Oh.
Because when Cal Kestis, the Jedi I'm talking about, when that purge happened, he was 12. You play as him 5 years later, he's 17, 18 when you're playing him, but he's still at the same skill set as a Padawan with a mind break where he can't use his old powers. So you get that feeling of dread because you're not in the Republic anymore. You're
Mhm.
in the Empire. And so you're that child Padawan trying to survive the Empire. And so it's a cool concept of that regard, and you having flashbacks and learning your powers and growing. And there's a lot of love was poured into that game, not just like character stories, but also lore stories of I'm going to spoil it here a little bit, but their whole objective is to find this thing that will identify kids who are force sensitive to recreate the Jedi Order. And Cal had a really cool vision that you play as, like you play through it and you're seeing visions, not graphic, but you're seeing these visions of your new Jedi Order being attacked by the Empire and these kids getting taken out. And so at the end of it, you don't make the decision as a player. Cal does, which is fine. There's no problem with that. But Cal was like, we're not doing this because those kids are going to be fine. They're going to live normal lives without us getting involved. What are we doing if we do that? And
Mhm.
just making it worse. And that was like, that, like, yes, that's the end of the game, but that's a really cool character growth of this. And he actually has to argue against his current master, his advisor, against that, showing his also maturity and growth in this as well. And I'm not getting that in this new one. This new one seems more like he has attachment issues because he's now part of the resistance, which is cool. That's a different type of character growth, right? But it's not all in one go. It's not streamlined.
Mhm.
And so if you had me at like pick one in your day and age right now, Josh, I'm like, it's for nostalgia and fun, it's Republic Commando, just because it's SWAT and gunplay is really good. Coordinating your guys really good on different areas. Even though it's outdated, it still holds up to this day. You will not find anything like it except for like Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Siege, like not Siege, but the original Rainbow Six, where it's a spec op team,
Mm-hmm.
but in Star Wars, and you will never find something like that ever again. Right? They would have to make a whole new game called Republic Commando 2. Um, and then the actual first game, because they're gonna make a third, and then that's gonna be the last game, and they're hinting that he will be in the next. If they are doing a new Star Wars movie, of it would be him showing up in a movie that takes place after 6, because they have, what's his name, the guy who plays Winter Soldier in Marvel. You know what I'm talking about?
Bucky.
Yeah, the
I don't know
actor.
the actor's name.
Yeah.
Top of my head. I can Google it real quick.
But he plays Luke now, with a little bit of like CGI over the face to make him look a little more like Luke. So there's a hint that his character will show up in new movies, and that's really cool. I can't wait to see that, because there's no hint that he dies. It's very much like your character lives, everything's fine.
Sebastian Stan.
Sebastian Stan, yeah. So they've hinted that this actor has hinted that they will try to do that in the future. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to what is in the future for Disney. I think they've learned a lot of lessons with all the backlash that's happened. And with all the development of games, there's, in a weird way, if you actually got a nerd who played the guy who played Darth Maul in the Clone Wars, is definitely somebody who I want to take over, because they're making a Darth Maul series. But if you got a couple Star Wars nerds to actually who had played the old games that were what people might say are crap, but they actually know what they're talking about. Like, hey, why don't we do these, but better? Like, if you just did those, oh my God, that's money in the bank immediately. If you take the episode 1 concept, the episode 1 game, because you were not just doing the scenes from the movie, you were actually traversing the city of Naboo. Like, you were actually going through the Gungan area underwater. Like, there's a lot that you actually do. It's just not a good game, so the reference is not that well. But if you remade it in new a new engine, you had people that were dedicated to the lore, that actually liked the world, and they took these old games. Like what I just said, if you made an entire game that's just pod racing, and you made a show that's just pod racing, it's like NASCAR for Star Wars. It's all you need. It's fantastic. They did a really good like fighter pilot simulator game recently, which I think is Rogue Squadron. Look up that sometime. But yeah, that was a great game too. That was like a VR immersive, like it's like 3v3, like pilot versus pilot, and like actual ship, like spaceship mechanics, where you can actually like move your ship really fast. So you would dive around an asteroid and then tilt your ship really fast around the corner, so that when it came around, the enemy came around that was following you, you can just unload. So it was a lot of actual fighter pilot skills that you could utilize there, and teamwork to actually work. Because remember, it's 3v3 or
Yeah.
4v4. It was very neat. It didn't get much traction, but there was no, unlike Battlefront 2 EA, there was no controversy over it. It just, that's a niche genre game that not many people are going to pick up, because not many people are into vehicle fighting, right? But you could make all these different types of games down the road that would just sell like hotcakes if the movies start I'm not going to say movies. If the cinema started doing better, they would increase their fan base. If they actually did better PR, if they got rid of some people that were constantly taking them because they want to push their activism into their genre, and I'll talk about that some other time, because it's not that I am mad about it, but I'm like, that's a bad move. You shouldn't have done that. Um, and yeah, like if they just kind of trimmed the fat and focused on what they were originally good at, they would be once again the top fantasy. Because back in the day, Star Wars out destroyed Star Trek, like period. And that's not me being mean. Is that Star Trek was more of a very heavy nerd base. Like you had to be pretty in what I like to call the game closet, in order to be a Star Trek fan. This is in the past. Like this is not now, right? But Trekkies were much more like ingrained because Star Wars was broken down in the movies and games, while Star Trek was just a show in some books, right? So it definitely was more of a niche that was more dedication fans,
Mm-hmm.
right? So Star Wars obviously outranked, but now Star Trek, ever since the new movies and ever since like new stuff has come out, is almost like
Neck and neck.
neck and neck because Star Wars has dropped so much and Star Trek has risen so high. And I don't love or hate one above the other. They're each in their own thing. But if you're looking at what competition would like how you would destroy that competition, honestly, if Star Wars just, grew up and stopped preaching, to be honest, like if they actually just understood, hey, we're an entertainment company, maybe we should do that. And that's why George Lucas is like, yeah, I shouldn't have sold it.
Give me my movies back.
Yeah, he pretty much was like, give me the IP back because he originally was like, there should not be an episode 7.
Mm-hmm.
He straight up was like, there should not be an episode 7. Like, if the way he phrased it is, it's fine to have other Star Wars movies, but it should not follow the Skywalkers. It should not follow that family. That family's story should be done.
Like, leave that canon aspect alone and make your own and build off of it.
Exactly. And he's like, you can reference Luke's temple. Like he recreates the Jedi Order. That's fine. That's part of the lore now. But like it was part of the lore. Yeah, that got tanked. But even Mark Hamill's a little bitter about that. But if George buys it back, he's going to kind of do the show The Mandalorian. Like when that first came out, everyone was like, "Oh my god, this is what we've been looking for." No Jedi, just grounded Star Wars, like what other people live with that don't have the Force in this universe. Like we want to see that, and that's what George wants to do. Sure, he's like, no, I want to touch Jedi and stuff like that, and I want to every now and then.
Just season
But
it
we
in,
don't.
though.
Yeah, piecemeal it in, or have it really far in the future, and we can do Jedi then and have a different take on it, right? Or go way in the past to something called the High Republic, which if you were to be like, oh, is that episode 1? I'm like, no, episode 1's like the end of the High Republic. I would say like episode -50 would be the High Republic. Like that's how far back you're going for that. And strangely, that's like in Star Wars logic, it's like the more further back into the past you go, the better things are. Like technological wise, not culture wise. Empire, other than the Empire. Sorry about that. But yeah, no. I hope that I doubt that Disney's going to sell it to him. I could see them doing a partnership program where he has the creative rights, but he has to produce something.
Yeah. Because
Right?
he sold Lucasfilms as a whole, correct?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think his one thing was that you can't change the name of the company, so it's always going to be Lucasfilm. But he and Mark Hamill were very upset at what they did with Luke Skywalker. He was fine with some of the decisions of the movies per se, but overall as a whole, he was like, this is not what I had in mind at all. Mm-hmm. And when he kind of complained, they kind of didn't give him a silencing order, but kind of under the table was like, shush, this is not yours anymore. You be quiet. And now with the internet, with Twitter, with X, I hate that, with the idea of anyone could be their own reporter, aka Mousepad exists. It's kind of hard to hide this information now. It's not like the entertainment industry only has to go through the entertainment news. Now it's everybody. When there's a leak comes out, everybody's able to share it. So I'm just happy to, hopefully stay alive to see all this happen because Star Wars takes forever to get off the jump. But I don't know. I've moved on to different genres. When we talk lore dump, I'll tell you more about Jedi and Sith and how all these things actually happened, and where, weirdly enough, in the movies they did a really good job that was like adult themes. I don't mean naughty. I mean like, very like political side. Like for instance, like the Rise of the Empire is actually that was one of the few things that I was like, that this, you could not have made it any better. I know it's weird. It's like I have all these critiques, but like, no, the Rise of the Empire, actually how it happened verbatim, I'm like, makes total sense. And it was very well acted. it made total chronological sense of how it actually happened. Um, every time a piece of media, whether it be games or comics or books, even touched on it, it stayed consistent. It never had like a plot point that was missing or something inserted that didn't belong. It all fit. It all fit perfectly. Even the video game Star Wars Bounty Hunter, where you play as Jango Fett before the events of Episode 2, before he becomes Daddy of all the clones. You actually get to see his story and how that actually ties to what all happens. It's genius. And so the actual rise of the Empire, how the clones happened, how the Emperor gained power in the Senate, all that happened, I could not change anything to make it better. But there are things where, why did you go down this road? Like metachlorians, you mentioned. That was immediately uncanonized so quickly. And I'm not even going to mention this on
Oh,
this
honestly, the only
podcast.
reason why I remember it is because of Parks and Rec, where they were having that episode about like the fluoride in the water, and so they made up this email about midichlorians in the water to trick the reporter into outing her source and be like, "Ha, that's something from Star Wars," and it's just ingrained in my brain.
That's great. I completely forgot about that. I love that show. Yeah, no, I'm a huge dork. I'm a nerd. I'm not ashamed of it. There are people that are in my, we'll say, close circle that I know that go, you probably should grow up and focus on other things. I'm like, I focus on
No.
plenty of things. I'm allowed to have my
Passions.
giant slice of nerdom of different genres, and I'm trying to make a career out of it. Because do what you love, right?
That's what we're here
So
for.
exactly. So all y'all, thank you for sticking around. This has been a long episode with almost no editing needed. But I'll leave you with this. May the force be with you, and live easy, keep it cheesy. Take care.
A Mousepad production. Please like and subscribe. Our links are in the description of this content. Thank you.